the entire treatment court team. So he intended to join us, but he has other pressing issues going on. So we were just going to update him after this.
Okay.
Okay, the live stream has started.
All right. Well, then it's just us. I'm not sure how many people will get and will join us, but it'll probably be a fairly short meeting if it's just us.
Right. I guess I thought we would have more team folks join us. We got Greg Quinn coming on. Great.
Sandy, look at your hair. It's straight. It's cute.
Thanks, Chris.
Do you have to straighten it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's otherwise wildly curly and frizzy.
Yeah. Super cute.
And I've got pumpkin spice going here with my hair. I tried to color it myself so I didn't have a COVID exposure, and it didn't go well. So, I mean, it's fine, but it's not the color I was looking for.
As my mom would say, flying by in an airplane, it looks great.
I covered the gray, so at least I got that.
Looks like we have 2 more people, Sarah. Do you want me to let them in?
I've got it here.
Okay.
Looks like we've got Chris King and Paul Gilbertson. Great.
All right, well, we will go ahead and get going. I will call the meeting to order. And then I would guess we probably all, from what I can see, know each other. But I suppose we can at least list who's here for the purposes of the YouTube live as well as for the official sort of record of the roll call. So I see Sarah Benedict as the Criminal Justice Coordinator, myself, Chris Corpola, as the Human Services Director and Chairperson of this committee, Janae Brantner, Adult Treatment Court Coordinator, Sandy Frigo, Criminal Justice Adjuster, Assessor, Chris King from the Menominee Police Department, Paul Gilbertson from Probation and Parole, and Greg Quinn from Veteran Services. And then our IT support. Anybody that I'm missing, I'm not seeing? I don't think so. All right, so we have not met for a year. And so we are looking at approval of the minutes from October 28th. So not quite a year. So I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Any of you are welcome.
I'll make a motion, Chris.
All right, Sandy, second?
Second.
There you go. Second by Paul. Any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor of approving those minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, and I see that Lindsay Field, Integrated Treatment Specialist, is joining us. So, staff report. So we're just going to try to just do kind of a bring everybody up to speed on where treatment court is at since we have not met for a year. So
yes, so staff report, program, staff changes, updates with the Safer at Home. We have been primarily working from home since March 17th of this year. Some of us in the office are starting to get back at least part-time. But again, everything's still being remote at this time with court, meetings, things like that. We can meet in person if absolutely necessary, just following county protocols with the COVID guidelines. So, but everything remaining virtual at this time. We've got a few new team members. We got Jolie Burr from Arbor Place. Shelley Tomschick with the Hudson Public Defender's Office, Chris King, who's joining us today from Menominee Police Department, and then Amber Hahn with the DA's office. So since we've met last year, those are our 4 new team members. Let's see, I think the only other thing I had done was just that we've got our family treatment court running now since last August. So another treatment court program in the works here for those with CHIPS cases. So 2 different treatment courts here. Sarah, anything to add to that?
Nope. Then that's the program and staff changes. So yeah, just a lot of new staff coming into the program and just trying to get them up to speed. And we appreciate MPD joining in. That law enforcement piece is important. So the team's kind of growing and evolving, but we're staying connected.
All right.
All right, snapshot of trends. As far as 2020 so far, folks that we've served this year, 80% methamphetamine as the primary substance, alcohol being 15%, and then other 5%. So as all other years, methamphetamine remains our primary drug of choice. So in 2020, actually kind of surprised me, but we have 80% males and 20% females. So more of a male population with us. So far this year, we've had 3 graduate, 7 have been terminated. I'll also note with that graduation takes 18 to 24 months. So of course, we're gonna have more terminations. Those happen quicker than graduates. But actually, when looking at our terminations, we had 1 that was absconding. So that was an automatic termination. 1 of them refused treatment, so they were terminated. And then actually 5 of them had new charges that involved violence. So we're not just terminating for, substance use, things like that. It's pretty significant things that have happened this year, again, with 5 of them being violent related charges. So, and then we've got 10 currently active right now.
All right. Any questions about that?
I guess I would just add a lot of kind of what we're hearing from other treatment courts and some of the trainings we've been participating in is that because of COVID, there's less access to treatment, there's less availability to treatment. And it's a difficult time for everybody. So terminations should really be limited and not really related to, and you need to take into consideration that we've got COVID and all these extra constraints going on. But as Janae indicated, the terminations were due to new charges that were not just possession or use charges. They were really significant charges that folks came back on. But I think it illustrates that continued use often does lead to additional charges. So we've definitely had more relapses seen this year with COVID and just more challenges in that sobriety and keeping people connected with treatment.
And I think that that's I think that kind of the way that we've indicated it here at DHS, both with regard to our family treatment court participants, but also just with regard to substance use and mental health issues, is that our numbers are greater as is the acuity of the people that we're serving. They just have a far more serious needs than we've maybe seen collectively in the recent past anyway. All right, recent staff trainings.
So a lot of trainings going on this year, all which have been pretty much virtual since March. So we were unable to attend our WATCP, Wisconsin Association of Treatment Court Professionals, in May and also in September. However, they are doing virtual now. So I can send out the link to everyone. A lot of different sessions. You can pick and choose which ones that you want to sign up for. So those are virtual but at least still available, which is nice since we haven't been able to meet in person.
And free.
Yes, free of charge. Otherwise, we've been looking at trainings with peer supports, our MRT program. Motivational interviewing is a huge thing used with substance use disorders. A lot of COVID related trainings as far as how to continue effective operations. Drug testing, our drug testing has remained open this whole time, which has been good for the program. We just had a Marcy's Law training, which is looking at victim rights in treatment courts, and then new risks and current treatments with methamphetamine was a training yesterday that was actually pretty good, just with up-to-date information on methamphetamine and trends there. So again, a lot of different trainings that we've all been doing throughout the office, but a lot of really good topics and all virtual.
And I would just add, it's an expectation of treatment court team members to have 40 hours of training per year in relevant materials. So there's a lot of opportunities to get those hours in with these virtual training opportunities. Sometimes you can just register and watch them later on at a time that's more convenient. But just encourage everybody to take a look at that. There's special things for law enforcement or for probation, and certainly with the treatment side as well.
All right. And anything additional for successes and challenges?
So challenges, obviously, COVID has been challenging for everyone. Recovery and isolation, you hear all the time, doesn't work. So remaining connected. We're trying to have more frequent meetings with people, requiring people to be on Zoom so we can actually see them. It's still just been really challenging as far as technology issues and individuals maybe not having phones or access to internet. So just kind of working through those things. I would say most of our participants though are live on Zoom with us now, and we've kind of worked through those things. As far as successes, I would say that itself is a big success. Having everyone connected with us via Zoom has been, again, challenging, but also we're to the point that it's kind of our new normal, and people have responded as expected to it, and we're making it work. Working with high risk, high need individuals, I would say another cool success this year that we've seen, that I'd say Lindsay, Paul, and I mostly have seen is, we've had people struggling even after they graduate. However, we've had a few graduates actually struggle and reach back out to us. And then also, say, hey, I checked myself back into treatment. So it's not this ongoing cycle. They're actually reaching out for help if they're struggling. And we've had obviously graduates doing really well that keep checking in as well. So just nice to see that people are kind of self-correcting. They've learned from the program, learned coping skills and how to manage their addiction. So I would say that's a huge success, especially with the population that we work with.
And that is a great segue into number 6, the CJCC Recidivism Project.
All right, I'll take this one. So just to get everybody up to speed, the CJCC identified goals for this year and moving forward to really look at all of our collaborative programs and the outcomes. And one of those outcomes that we're able to measure is recidivism. Folks coming right back into our system, the criminal justice system. So our data work group of the CJCC has been working on this project for most of the year. We plan on presenting the final numbers, so to speak, at our CJCC meeting in November 12th. But we do have our treatment court data ready to go and wanted to present it to the advisory group here to get comments and feedback and thoughts and considerations. Because we're dealing with this high risk, high need population, they're the most difficult folks to really to work with and to have sustained behavior change. So we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at the recidivism. But I'm going to share my screen and show a couple of slides of the numbers that we've crunched. So hold on. All right, you guys see the slide here?
Yep.
Okay. So a lot of information on here, so I'll go through some of the highlights. So what we're looking at, not just treatment court, but we're looking at pre-charge diversion, we're looking at the TOP program, treatment court, family treatment court, reentry program, and the domestic violence program. So for treatment court, we're really looking, for all the programs, we're looking at new charges and new convictions. Really, are these folks coming back into our criminal justice system, and we're putting resources towards them, or are they kind of out of our system? So anecdotally, we often hear about people coming back through, because we know those faces that are coming back through our jail. We know those names, but we often don't hear about the folks that are doing well and we don't hear from. So just want to keep that in mind too, that I think a lot of times we think, these are challenging folks, and we're still seeing them no matter what. But our research has shown that we're not seeing the vast majority, at least initially. So this program was started back in 2008, and we looked at 1 year, 3 year. I'm going to just switch to the next slide and come back to this one here. We looked at the numbers that have completed the program in each year, the completion rates. Then we looked at 1 year recidivism, so new charges, new convictions, 3 year new charges, new convictions, and 5 year new charges, new convictions. So as we kind of go through the years, these cohorts fit into different categories. So cohort is those that graduated in a year. So we started the program back in 2008. We never had any program graduates. It takes typically, maybe at that time it was 12-month graduation, but now it's 18 to 24 months to actually graduate the program. So folks are involved in the program for up to several years before they graduate. And then once they graduate, we're looking at 1 year post-program, 3 years post-program, 5 years post-program to see if they came back into our criminal justice system. So the numbers do get smaller as we get to that 5-year rate. But what we've found, and this is by year, and we're going to do this every year. So this is through the end of 2019, that we've had 45 out of 88 graduates, or 45 out of 88 folks complete successfully. So as I spoke before, just the duration of the program, it's going to take longer for us to get the graduates than it is for people to really wash out of the program, whether that's new charges, they're not willing to fully participate, a number of things. So it's easier to get terminated from the program than to graduate the program, but we're at about a 51% average. So it is not an easy program for people to get through in general. We can say about half of the people that start will actually complete the program. When we're looking at national averages, it's about 59%. So we're a little bit lower than the national average for a treatment court as far as that completion rate. But not too far off. I think it does show that these are tough programs, and not everybody's going to get through them. But if they do get through the program, we're expecting some reductions in recidivism. When we looked at the 1 year post-program from graduation date, we found that 9 out of 39 graduates had new charges. So about 23% had new charges within 1 year. When we looked at the 3-year average, 7 of 23 had new charges. So then it creeped up to 30% recidivism. And then a very small pool or smaller pool, we got 9 of 21 at that 5-year rate have new charges or new convictions. So one of the things is really, how do we present this information? So when we're looking at recidivism, it's really talking about the failure rate, right? We're talking about those that fail post-program. They're having new charges for a number of reasons. So this is where we're wanting to really kind of change that narrative. So although we have the 23% recidivism rate 1 year post-program, That tells us that 77% of the program graduates did not have any new charges 1 year post-program. When we go to 3 years, that's 70% of the graduates did not have new charges. And then that went down to 57% for that 5-year measure. So when we're looking at these, for folks to graduate, they need to be doing satisfactory in the program while they're in the program. So that's, a year to 2 years that they're in the program, plus that 1 year post-program, we're still seeing that continued law-abiding behavior. And that's really what we want. So this is an example of how we can effectively manage high-risk, high-need people that have substance use issues as their kind of primary driver, that we can do that safely in the community with an intensive supervision program like treatment court. Those positive results do wane after a while. And we're hearing that, on the national level, they're not even looking at the 5-year recidivism as much as the 1 year, 3 year. There's a lot of factors that go into why people may kind of lose the benefits of the program within 5 years. So overall, I'd say the program's doing well. This is just through 2019, as we heard Janae give us the update for this year. We've got a lot more terminations than we have graduations. So these numbers will change every year, but this is something that we intend to do every year to help us really track how we're doing overall. One of the things that we're working on for the data work group and the bigger presentation to our stakeholders is really how are we comparing this to other things? Because this is all interesting and whatnot, but for folks that really don't know if that's good or what we're comparing it to, we need to develop that narrative more. So we do have some stats. The national average recidivism for treatment court is 16% recidivism at year 1 and 28% at year 2. They're not even going out to 3 and 5 years at this point. So our recidivism, 16% at year 1. So we are higher than that. And then we don't do the 2-year measures. We did 3-year measures. So they're at 28% at 2 years. We're at 30 at 3 years. So that's not so far off. But we're dealing with small numbers as well. So that information, when we're talking about percentages, it just can be misleading. So it's important for us to show our math and the percentage because we're talking about a small number of folks. A lot of the research out there on the recidivism is a reduction in recidivism. So the meta-analysis of 276 drug courts show that it's a 10 to 15% reduction in recidivism. So if you're already taking a high-risk, high-need individual, we can expect treatment courts to reduce their recidivism by 10 to 15%. Not necessarily wipe it out or make an angel out of somebody after they get through a program. We are seeing some of that, but the reality is we're seeing that these are lifelong issues, health issues that folks need to manage. And if they can do that in a healthy way with treatment that route versus getting new criminal charges, coming back into our criminal system, and then we're having to force them into that treatment realm, that coerced treatment. We don't get as good of outcomes unless folks really buy into that they need the treatment. It's gonna sink in better, and we're gonna have those longer term effects. So I think at this point, I'm just going to open it up for feedback, comments, thoughts, considerations, different things that maybe we want to look at before we bring this to a larger audience.
So one of the thoughts that I have, Sarah, is I don't know what this data would show, and I'm not even exactly sure what the measurement is, but I wonder if there's value in looking at pre-treatment court participation. So if So what I'm thinking is if a treatment court participant had, I don't know, on average 4 new convictions or 4 new charges or 8 new charges or whatever in the years preceding, some measure of time preceding, like I think we could kind of ferret that out a little bit in the data work group, but it might be helpful because it's sort of like, okay, so I still think if you think that if we think that the treatment court participants are kind of the most complex and challenging of the participants that we're going to work with in the programs that we have outside of incarceration, then to have 57% of those people not come back into the system in 5 years, in my mind, is significant. But that's also strengthened if you know that that representative group of 88 people also prior to that had, 125 convictions or, whatever.
Yep, I understand what you're saying. To start to quantify that high risk, high need, really look at the number of cases that folks can't come in on prior, and right, that I think illustrates the point more as well of that reduction in recidivism, or if they had 8 cases a year they were coming in on, and we haven't had any for the last not only 2 years while they're in the program, but 5 years post program, that really is
a huge success.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I would guess there's no one in the treatment court program who wouldn't have had a charge in the previous 5 years, but I would guess it's a pretty significant number.
Mm-hmm. I would also note, we've I guess I'm losing the word here, but the data that we have here just kind of shows the years that they graduate and the numbers. So we've taken away the names and the information, but I think there's value in us really as a team going back and looking at some of those terminations and even successes to say what was going on, what were some of those factors that may have led to that termination or led to that graduation, so we can kind of improve the program more to address some of those needs. This program has changed significantly over the years. And we've certainly had a number of really tough cases in the program. And I tell you, by looking at the list of who got through, who graduated and who didn't, it's really hard to determine early on who will do well and who won't, because some of the most difficult cases have continued to do well, and then some of those that sailed through the program have come back with new charges. So I think there's things that we can learn as a team by really digging into those terminations and graduations to see what were some of those factors that we can maybe ameliorate moving forward, to increase that outcome or increase the engagement while people are in the program, not just kind of doing all the things that we need to do to get through the program and then immediately going back to their old behaviors.
And some of those things might become goals for the future then. I mean, if you look at some of those national averages and those kinds of things, I mean, I think it'd be great to get to the national averages, but it's also be great to surpass them. And what would it take to get us to that? What kinds of tweaks or changes or additional services or whatever? What could make that happen? Are there other feedback on that data? Surprising, not surprising? I know you guys are all connected in some way, except for Greg, but.
I do have a question again for the Wisconsin average prison data on there, the recidivism rate for that. I guess when you look at it with those percentages for stakeholders involved in this, they may be like, well, we're not even doing as well as the recidivism rates for that. But I think that must be numbers for just general prison recidivism. I'm guessing not for people with drug dependent issues.
You're muted, Sarah.
Yeah, so, and that is very outdated too. That's from, 2013. And those are two different data points right
Would
there.
just be nice to have that number, and it's probably not possible to compare people that are sentenced for, high level drug offenses, and then where you're actually comparing apples to apples. Otherwise, people may just look at that and go, well, it's not working as well as we like it to. And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, right. No, that's a
No,
great
I think
point.
that's a valid, very valid point, that we're immersed in the information and the data, but if someone's just looking at raw numbers, it looks like we wouldn't even be doing as well as somebody who got just sent to prison.
Right.
So yeah, and that's kind of outdated information in just Wisconsin. The national jail and prison recidivism rate over 3 years is 76.6% for people with no programming. So when you compare that 76.6 nationwide to our 30% with treatment court, I mean, that's a significant one. And I think that was 2015. So still outdated, but again, looking at just
much bigger
numbers, how you
picture.
quantify it.
Yeah, much bigger picture to look at.
Right.
Do you think the larger audience might be interested in knowing what those charges or convictions were at the 1, 3, and 5 year mark?
We do have that information. We've got that available if there are questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
I just think some people might like to know what the breakdown looks like as far as the rearrest or convictions. Were they primarily felonies or were they low-level misdemeanors?
Okay.
Mhm. The other thing about it is, and I don't know really exactly how the messaging to this can be, but particularly for people who maybe spent some time in the program and either completed and or were terminated, but there is always the old proverbial seed planting. Like, you don't know really what for someone who had not been sober or in recovery for a long period of time prior to their involvement in treatment court, and then maybe whether they spent 1 month, 6 months, 9 months, a year sober, there's been a seed planted, and that seed might not come to take root and produce fruit for some time, but I just think that there's a messaging to the data only tells part of the story.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if that weren't true, we would never remove kids from homes. Like, you just say, well, whatever it is, it is, it is. But we know that stabilizing people's circumstances results in outcomes, even if they're not necessarily immediate. Any other feedback? All right. Then we guess we're going to do a quick round robin of just if there's anything from your organization that's worth sharing with regard to, since we've met for a year. Janae, we've heard from you. Anything additional to share?
No.
All right. Sandy, I'm just taking in the order I see you. So Sandy, you want to speak to us for a bit about criminal justice assessments and jail assessments and what that looks like?
So from March until August, I was not meeting with individuals in the jail for the pretrial risk assessments and the substance abuse and mental health screeners that we were doing. But we did resume that in August. I'm able to do that now through meeting in a no contact booth. And then through the summer, I was still able to meet with treatment court referrals and our treatment opportunity program referrals, whether they were in custody or out of custody, and we just did that over the phone. So that's kind of where the assessment protocol is right now due to COVID.
Chris?
Sure. Project Hope, I guess, would be the biggest thing for Menominee PD. Is we're in phase 1 of that project, which includes several different key components, but really trying to tackle the methamphetamine issue in Dunn County and especially in Menominee. Right now, we are working on Botvin life skills, so it would be teaching students in our district and countywide starting next year about an evidence-based program that's shown to actually decrease usage later on in life. So something different than DARE, which definitely does not have some strong evidence-based practices. So that's exciting. We're putting a lot of work towards that right now. There was one other thing that I thought I was going to hit on, and it's escaping me right now. But Project Hope would probably be the biggest thing from our department. And the other thing was too is probably just us being part of a treatment program is a big thing. We've been missing that part from our department. There's I guess a little bit of a stigma in law enforcement that treatment courts don't work. That we're just putting Band-Aids on, and to have a liaison to kind of help with that narrative or that rhetoric, I think is pretty beneficial, both for our department and for the community. So.
All right. Paul.
Hi. So DOC is kind of going through a lot of changes right now. We're operating under 2 different sets of policies that we're learning to adapt with. First being the COVID policies. When those came out in March, it really changed a lot of what we do and what we have the ability and authority to do. And along with that, our new administration in Madison is changing a lot of our policies for more of a long-term forecast, I guess. And they're hopefully going to be more beneficial and more in line with treatment court standards. There's a lot of things that they're not finalized yet, but from what I'm hearing and what has been implemented, quite frankly, a lot of the stuff that we used to be able to do, we're no longer doing. Holds for things like simple possession or testing positive on a UA are no longer happening. Revocations will be significantly down. That's a real push from our administration. Things like termination from treatment court is no longer considered a violation. Being revocated for being terminated from treatment court isn't going to happen anymore. It is considered what's called an aggravating factor, but it cannot be the primary factor for a revocation. A lot of changes. We're all getting used to them and trying to understand them. There's supposed to be something from the DOC put out towards community stakeholders trying to explain, I guess, where we're going and what that is. I don't know when that will come out, but obviously I am learning on this as much as we all are with COVID. We're all adjusting and adapting as we go along, but it's a lot of changes, that's for sure.
What will be fascinating about that, well, not that it's complicated to study it, but what would be interesting, because I think about this both like with our incarceration numbers too, where our jail population is so much less than it was, 8 months ago. Like, does that result in any changes? Do we see an increase of criminal activity or a decrease or none? Like, what is the impact to that? It's forced change. And is there like, what's the longer term outcome to that? I don't know that we'll ever be sophisticated enough to measure that, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Miss Lindsay.
I don't have any updates.
Okay. Greg?
Good afternoon, everyone. In the Dunn County Veterans Office, I think the important thing to note is we are meeting with veterans and dependents in person. So you have anyone that you think that could use some support or even a benefits overview, just to find out what type of entitlements that they may have, please refer them to our office, and we'll take care of them. A couple things worth noting, I think more specific to this group, is some of the mental health direct contact to help support those that are in need. Most of that is being done virtually, and there is some challenges right now to assist and get some veterans that are in need for inpatient treatment, or even to be assessed for that through the VA. There's some challenges with that, but please don't hesitate to contact us to help pursue that, so we can get them on the list and at least try to prop up some support for them during this time. So that's probably the big highlights that I'd want everyone to know. Thank you.
All right. Sarah, do you have anything that you wish to?
Sure. I just wanted to clue in everybody that we are preparing a OWI forum for the community. It'll be a virtual forum. That'll be hopefully in November. But it's not just drinking and driving, it's drug driving as well. So that's another significant challenge that we have in our community, is just a high number of OWIs that come through, and a lot of system resources go towards that. We are not planning to OWI court per se, but we are building the case for an OWI court down the road. We'll be getting a third judge in 2021, and that gives us resources to do other things as well. So while this is we call this a hybrid court, we call it a drug court, but it's essentially a hybrid court, meaning we accept not only drug charges, but also our alcohol as the underlying issue. But there's there's a whole lot of other folks out there that can benefit from treatment. I would just add, our numbers are low in treatment court. So we do need to keep the program viable, and that's something that we need to have referrals. That's part of the early referral process that Sandy does. But we also have to have other system buy-in with the program. That's the DA's office and the defense bar, that they see treatment court as a valuable program for folks in our community. And then lastly, I would just say that, we've had a lot of challenges with just the access to treatment, good treatment. We've also had the community challenges of people trying to find employment during COVID. It's difficult. Housing during COVID, we've got a lot of folks that have needs. And if we're not able to address those needs early on, we see people continue to falter or do those old behaviors, and they're not really even able to start to thinking towards that treatment because they're in that survival mode. So we don't have too many of our community partners out there with us today, but that's just an important part of this advisory. And even though they might not be here in this meeting, we do have contact with them. Janae's working with them all the time, the Heidi Hootens of the world and the job centers and others. But it really does take us partnering with our community organizations to help address the needs that these folks have, because we don't have the funding in the program to help with housing, and we don't have the funding to help with basic needs. It's really staffing and drug testing what goes into treatment court. So we rely on other programs, other organizations to help us with those basic needs. And as you know, this population is stigmatized, right? They've got mental health, they got substance use, they've got criminal records, they've got 3 strikes. So a lot of folks don't even want to give them the time of day. So it's important that we advocate for folks, and we do that every day. But I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to our community partners out there. We can't do it without them. And that's all I've got.
Greg, you had something to add?
Yeah, probably the most important item I forgot to add, and I apologize for missing this, is our office is partnering with UW Extension, Pepin Buffalo County employee, and we're doing interviews on Monday, bringing on a veterans reentry support specialist. They'll be housed kind of in this virtual world out of the Dunn County Veterans Office, but the whole goal within those 3 counties is to basically meet with all of the partners, the veteran service organizations, the police departments, the Department of Corrections, Human Services, to gather up information, an important part about veterans and their mindset and the kind of the different ways of thinking and approach, to then at the end, kind of the output of it is to be able to help present, educate folks on kind of the military mindset, and it can help in our service delivery if we all understand some of the language, some of the approaches, so that we can better serve that population. So there'll be more to follow on that. Thanks for letting me do that, Chris.
All right. Well, let's quickly talk about when we want to meet again, since we didn't meet for a year. I'd propose maybe so we stayed a little closer to the fidelity of having a treatment court advisory committee that we consider maybe meeting twice a year. But I would entertain, if somebody thinks it needs to be more regular than that we could move that up to.
I think twice a year is good.
So if we looked at, what is it, October? So we looked at sometime late next spring, April or May-ish, maybe? April-ish, I guess. March-ish, I don't know. Somewhere, March, April, May. We can find a date and bring us together again at that point in time and see where we're at in the COVID world. I'm sure we'll all be happily COVID-free by then.
Let's hope.
All right. Anything else anyone wishes to speak to or share, comment? All right. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Mhm.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.